In Palm Beach, Florida, somebody just spent around $250 million buying up beachfront houses, one after another, quietly, like a man collecting stamps. Nobody knows who it is. The buyers on the paperwork are companies called things like Creekshore and Mango Leaf. Delaware shells, no names, no faces, just the deed, the money, and a wall of lawyers between them. And that is not a loophole. That's the entry-level move. Because when a billionaire buys a house, almost nothing works the way it does for you. They often don't use their name. They frequently don't pay cash, even though they could. Their property tax can be lower than their neighbors, and if they play it perfectly, the profit on that mansion may never be taxed. Not once, not ever. So today we're doing something different. We're going to buy a mansion, the way a billionaire would, step by step. And by the end, you'll understand a sentence that sounds insane until you see the math. Their house isn't a home. It's a tax structure with a roof on it. Step 1. Disappear. Almost no billionaire buys a trophy home in their own name. They buy it through an LLC, often stacked, one company owning another, usually registered in a state like Delaware where ownership records stay private. Why bother? 3 reasons, and only one of them is romantic. Privacy. Nobody wants a map to their bedroom. Liability. If someone slips by the pool, they sue the company, not the fortune. And leverage. When the seller doesn't know a billionaire is buying, the price doesn't magically triple. That last one is the real reason. In this world, anonymity isn't vanity. It's a discount. So the house is bought by a company nobody can trace. Fine. Now comes the part that makes no sense at first glance, because the richest people on earth are about to do something bizarre. They're going to take out a... For decades, this trust had no rules, and a grieving customer who can't think straight is a very, very profitable customer. The government spent nearly 10 years investigating what funeral homes were doing to families. What they found is now illegal. They told people embalming was required by law. It wasn't. They refused to itemize a single price. They forced grieving families to buy bundles they never wanted. And they held a near monopoly on caskets that kept prices in the stratosphere. So in 1984, the funeral rule was born, the first law forcing these homes to list prices item by item, and making it illegal to lie about what you're required to buy. Progress. And yet, one line survived every reform. The one fee you still, to this day, cannot refuse. By law, the home can charge one fee you are forbidden to decline, several $1,000s for overhead that you can't itemize and can't opt out of. That single line is the spine of the entire industry. Then the casket. A box bought for a few hundred, sold for thousands. Markups that can top 1,000%. And here's the part the industry hates you knowing. That same 1984 rule made it legal to buy your casket anywhere. Costco, Walmart, Amazon. And the funeral home is forbidden from charging you a cent to accept it. The escape hatch is right there, in black and white. Almost nobody uses it, because who's price-checking coffins on Amazon the day their mom dies? The markup survives not because it's hidden, but because it's human. But the smartest money here isn't on the receipt at all. To see it, stop thinking like a mortician and start thinking like Warren Buffett. Buffett built Berkshire on float. Take people's money today, invest it for years, pay out much later. Funeral homes run the identical play. They just call it pre-need. A healthy 65-year-old prepays for their own funeral, locking in today's price. The home takes that cash, drops it in a trust, and lets it compound for 20 years before spending a cent. Future revenue, collected in advance, guaranteed. A funeral home with a big pre-need book isn't a shop. It's a hedge fund with a chapel attached. It's brilliant. Which is exactly why, when it goes wrong, it doesn't just fail. It detonates. And takes tens of thousands of families down. Ask a billionaire's advisor to pick a state. And they're not picking scenery. They're picking a tax code. Florida is the poster child. No state income tax. Strong protections for your primary residence. And a place called Palm Beach, a barrier island roughly 16 miles long that is now home to dozens of billionaires whose combined net worth runs into the hundreds of billions. That's why you keep seeing the same migration. Sell the New York penthouse. Declare Florida as your primary home, and watch your annual tax bill fall off a cliff. The mansion isn't a purchase, it's residency with a pool. Then there's Manhattan's Billionaires Row, those impossibly thin towers on 57th Street. Half of those apartments sit dark most of the year because they were never meant to be lived in. They're vaults you can stand inside, concrete safety deposit boxes with a view of Central Park. And Aspen, the Hamptons, Beverly Hills. Same logic, different flavor, scarce land, trophy status, and a buyer pool that doesn't blink at the price. So they own it anonymously, financed cleverly, taxed gently, in the right state. There's just one problem left. Eventually, they might want to sell. And that's where the machine gets truly elegant. Say the property is an investment, not the family home. Selling it should trigger capital gains tax, unless you don't technically sell it. You exchange it. Under Section 1031 of the tax code, if you roll the proceeds from one investment property into another, the tax bill doesn't come due. It gets deferred. And you can do it again and again. There's no legal limit to how many times you can roll it forward. Every trade-up, the tax follows you like a shadow, never landing. Then there's the land play. Own a large estate. Donate the development rights to a conservation group, promising never to build on it. And you can claim a charitable deduction for the value of what you gave up. You keep the land. You keep living there. You just promised not to put condos on your own lawn. And to be fair, many of these easements protect genuinely beautiful places. But the abuse got so aggressive. Inflated appraisals, deductions engineered far beyond reality, that the IRS put syndicated versions on its official list of abusive schemes and went after them. When the tax authority names your strategy publicly, you've been noticed. So, deferred, deducted, delayed. But deferred isn't erased. Somewhere out there is a tax bill with their name on it, growing quietly for decades. Right? Here's the part that changes. Remember, buy, borrow, die? We did buy. We did borrow. Now, the third word does all the work. When someone dies and passes assets to their heirs, the tax basis of those assets is generally stepped up to their value at death. Translation: a house bought for $5 million, now worth $80, is handed to the heirs as if they'd paid $80. The $75 million in gains that accumulated over a lifetime. For capital gains purposes, it can simply vanish. The 1031 exchanges that deferred the tax? Deferred right up to the reset. The stock never sold? Same thing. The debt gets settled by the estate, and the family keeps the house, the assets, and a clean slate. That is the actual machine. Not one clever trick. A relay race. Anonymity buys the house. Debt funds it without a taxable event. Prop 13 freezes the annual bill. The 1031 pushes the gain down the road. And death, of all things, is the finish line where the tax simply stops chasing you. Which is why the ultimate move in billionaire real estate isn't buying well. It's never. Meet Service Corporation International. $4 billion in revenue last year. Around 1,500 funeral homes. And 500 cemeteries. And you've never heard of them, because that is precisely the strategy. When SCI buys your local funeral home, they change nothing you can see. Same vintage furniture, same family name on the sign. Because they understand the one thing that matters. Trust doesn't transfer to a logo. It transfers to a name. So they buy the name, keep Grandpa's photo on the wall, and quietly cash the checks. Why would a corporation want a low-growth, cremation-squeezed business? Because it can survive the exact squeeze killing everyone else using Costco's playbook. Spread the crushing fixed costs across hundreds of locations. Buy caskets in a volume a family home could never dream of. And sit on billions in prepaid trusts and perpetual care funds, compounding in the dark. And when they wanted to get bigger, they didn't build. They bought their biggest rival. In 2013, SCI swallowed the number 2 chain, Stewart Enterprises, for around $1.4 billion. Regulators were so alarmed, they forced SCI to sell off locations just to let the deal through. This is the psychology the family owner never sees coming. He feels every 3 a.m. call. The corporation feels only the spreadsheet. His grief is their margin. It's a roll-up. 15,000 fragmented family businesses, each one aging owner away from a sale, absorbed one main street at a time. The quietest takeover in America. So after all of it, is a funeral home actually worth owning? The answer is not. If a business built on legal loopholes fascinates you, wait until you see the next one. An industry that sells you literally nothing, empty space, and keeps 78 cents of every dollar as profit. Self-storage. The numbers are ridiculous. This is the margin. We don't just explain how money works. We show you the machinery underneath. A mystery buyer just spent $250 million on Palm Beach beachfront through shell companies named Creekshore and Mango Leaf. Nobody knows who it is. That's not a loophole. That's the entry-level move. We walk through how a billionaire actually buys a mansion, step by step. The stacked LLCs that hide the name. Why the richest people on earth take out mortgages they don't need. Buy, borrow, die. How California's Proposition 13 freezes their property tax while values explode. Why Florida and Palm Beach became the map's center of gravity. The 1031 exchanges that defer capital gains forever. Conservation easements and the IRS crackdown on the abusive versions. And the step-up in basis at death that can make a lifetime of gains simply disappear. Then we score it. Investment, tax structure, or fortress.